express it.
But we actually got to
Express
see him throughout the
yourself.
series, and he had multiple times to utilize an outlet and chose not to.
I mean, it's not like Mark where he expresses himself everywhere he gets a chance.
I mean, literally, that's what we
All
have to
over
call
the
it now. Is that,
walls and
there's Mark
backdrop and-
expressing himself.
Yep.
Yeah. Don't take a black light to the set.
no, it'll look like a Jackson Pollock painting.
God awful.
Why do you think the backdrop here is so bright and purple? There? It's just
Yeah.
everywhere.
Terrifying. I don't want to see what's on that shirt. Maybe because it was. in
I'd
the
be
Bellboys
more
room.
concerned considering that I just received this shirt.
I'm sorry if he got the black light. There's like, oh my god, what am I wearing? Hey, calm down. It could be blood or fecal matter.
Yeah. Clink, clunk, clink,
Clink, clank,
clink,
clink,
clink.
clank.
Hello, and welcome to Strange Happy Hour. I am one of your hosts, Brent, the Jesterhead, Metcalfe, along to my right. Oh, I did it again.
Handsome John.
And on the left.
The dispatcher, Mark Plover.
Normally, you would see us sitting here talking about topics we can't talk about, but this is what we like to call an evergreen episode, because believe it or not, there are times where we cannot all come together and record an episode in 1 week.
It's called
And
life.
We do not always need to bring in some hack
But
to
we don't wanna let you
replace one
down
of us. Exactly. So here we are, and rather than the normal Shabbats where we go over the weekly news, we're actually
Debauchery.
each brought our own topic that is more of an evergreen topic.
Discussion
Hence,
pieces.
The evergreen episode, where we're going to sit here and discuss it as well. I think it's time
Now,
for
granted,
us.
it can age based on some of these topics, but
I mean, like a fine wine or a cheese, where over time you're going to appreciate it more.
like playing 007.
Like playing 007. So I think it's time for us to discuss on this very show, like we do each and every week, without any further ado, without any hindrance, no stop, rolling like a train into your motherfucking face. The important we may have done an episode before this one.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think we're going to go in order here, if that's okay with the dispatcher.
Let's
We're going to
go.
start with him. Something about electronics, repairs.
Turn it off.
R2D2?
As you guys said, turn it off, turn it back on again, you know,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Problem
No, so,
I actually had that problem at work. I'll explain it to you later.
oh, okay. Interesting. Anywho, so a common problem, I'm assuming, well, you guys are both, well, no, you're not an iPhone user. You're an iPhone user.
I am one of those little devils. Yeah.
Have you had to deal with Apple's return repair system? Genius Bar and all that stuff.
A couple of times, but they were assholes the last time. And to be fair,
Thus sits the premise of this entire argument.
well, to get the point, I had an iPhone X. I had bought it with a cracked screen,
Yep.
and I got it repaired at a shop, and then the facial recognition stopped working.
Right.
I take it over to Apple, and I'm like, why is this not working? I got the screen replaced. It's with an OEM part. And he goes, oh, yeah, because we didn't do it. It won't work. And I'm like, so you just need a firmware update? And he's like, well, we're going to have to replace the screen and do it ourselves.
Yep.
So I'm like, you're going to say you replace the screen, use the same screen, and then do the firmware update and unlock it so it works? And I was like, and he wanted to charge me $300 for that.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And then they were like, but we'll give you $500 for the whole phone. And I'm like, yeah, I'll crack the screen first.
How much did the independent repair company cost you?
Originally, it was supposed to be $200, but I did it. They wanted to put an LCD screen on. It was like this new thing that they came out with to replace it, so it wasn't as expensive. And then, of course, it messed up.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh yeah, they were all faulty, and none of them worked. And so then they charged me another $100. But gave me the OEM part, so it was actually $100 off what it would have been, the $300.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. And then the facial recognition didn't work, and I'm like, I'm so done with this phone.
Yeah.
Well, so this is somewhat the premise. I'll say you had more of an independent or an issue of an experience anyway there. For those who haven't seen on YouTube or actually visited the repair shop in New York City, there is a gentleman named Louis Rossman for Rossman Repair Group. And he specializes in Apple repairs, specifically of like Apple products. And he has been a big proponent of this, and I've watched a lot of his videos recently because the cool thing is he live streams and does YouTube videos of him literally going onto the motherboards of Macs. And he doesn't go into iPhones as often, but he does it every now and then, where he will literally desolder and resolder chips because he's able to trace circuits on the boards themselves and say, okay, so is this getting PP3V3 underscore G3 hot, which is a primary power line that comes from your external charger or your battery, and he knows the name of the circuit and what chips it actually goes to and what it feeds to, and then can trace it back to find where it's gone bad and either find corrosion on a chip, where he's a lot of times just has to take an alcohol solution and clean it off and all that stuff and do that, and then just replace the chips if need be. A lot of times, like display screens will go out, but it's really just the power for the backlight that goes out because those are two high power connectors that happen to promote or bring a lot of corrosion, that kind of thing. And he knows to clean them out and do all these repairs and that kind of thing because he's had a lot of experience doing them. But he does something very specialized that Apple won't even touch. So here's the thing is he does these repairs and needs to get a hold of these chips to be able to do these independent repairs because a lot of times if it's a very small fix, he doesn't charge his customers for that because it's really not worth his time.
Okay.
Legitimately, if it takes him opening up the bottom of it and going, yeah, there's some corrosion there, and cleans it off and it works, he'll just hand the laptop back to them, they'll walk out and they won't have paid a thing.
Oh, wow.
Damn.
But the problem is the parts whenever he does big repairs and he needs to redo chips from massive water damage or something like that, the Genius Bar would have told the customers that come into Rossmann Repair Group, oh, well, yeah, you're going to have to spend $2,000 buying a new one because we can't really do anything with this, that kind of thing. And Apple refuses to repair the device. And if it's outside a certain warranty period, you can't pay them to repair the device. They will only replace it. And on modern devices, for example, they can't if the board is fried beyond a certain point, you cannot get your data back. Which is where you have to pay for iCloud and back everything up because the hard drives are literally soldered to the motherboards now. You cannot replace them. You can't upgrade them.
Why?
Nothing. So here's the conspiracy anyway. The conspiracy theory, the tinfoil hat theory, is that Apple is doing this anyway in a malicious sort of intent.
Yeah, I actually believe that Apple would do that, yeah.
So Louis Rossmann, with Rossmann Repair Group specifically, is a very big proponent of a new piece of legislation that's come in, and he's actually traveled around to something like 6 or 8 states now to speak on behalf of this. Mm-hmm. On his own dime, has flown across the country to try to talk to legislation in various districts of these states to try to help, push this bill along. New York actually is one of the places that attempted to pass it and then got to the New York Senate and was declined there. But they found out that Apple had actually lobbied against the bill, and that's why it didn't pass.
That makes sense, yeah.
Right to repair, which is the whole purpose of this legislation, is basically a proponent where the manufacturers of electronic devices are supposed to be required to provide to independent repair companies the manuals, the independent document or the individual documentation of devices, like down to the circuitry level, that kind of thing, if that's what they need, and provide an avenue for parts
for up to a certain amount of years.
Right, 10 years actually.
Vending machines are the same way. They after birth, they have to for 7 years they have to be able to have access to these parts being manufactured up to that date.
Okay.
So right to repair is nothing new. Massachusetts was the first state to pass a right to repair bill, not for tech specifically, for devices like this. They did it for automobiles.
Okay, that makes sense.
Like the fact that, like manufacturers, or if you took it back to a dealership, the dealership says, sorry, I can't touch this. You went to another dealer, you went to an independent shop that replaced your battery. Well, that's kind of absurd.
Yeah. Well,
if I do my own repairs on my car, who cares?
Arguably, it's anti-capitalist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So the way that went anyways, Massachusetts passed a bill that says that every manufacturer has to allow or has to be willing to provide parts and provide repair services anyway for vehicles that even if they have been worked on by independent repair companies or by the individual themselves.
Yeah.
It's your device, your car, you own it, you should be able to repair it or replace things as you need to.
Even if they screwed it up, you should have the ability to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. With that, every single auto manufacturer passed their own internal resolutions that said that they would abide by the right to repair bill in all 50 states.
Yeah, of course, because eventually it's going to bleed over, right?
Exactly.
Why not be prepared for it rather than sitting here and trying to push against it?
Exactly. So,
unlike Apple.
Right. So, right now, Apple has been lobbying against in the, I think it said 5 or 6 states now that are currently in the process of trying to pass their own right to repair bills, California being one of them.
That makes sense.
No surprise.
And Flapple.
So
that's a Pokemon.
Louis Rossmann, anyway, has been sort of a big proponent of this, and he has gotten himself a hold of some of these wiring diagrams and circuitry diagrams by doing it through foreign agencies like China, for example,
Of
that
course,
doesn't give a
yeah.
crap about copyright laws.
Yeah.
Nope.
So people internally have sold these off, and people have literally written software to help them go through and find these parts and all that stuff. The problem is still that even though he has these diagrams, he can do some repair services. Like he can desolder and resolder certain chips.
He's
But
still limited.
But for certain advanced chips, they literally don't exist on the market for him to purchase.
Yeah.
The way that he has to do it now for there's a power control chip that is specifically that he has to get a hold of because it's a semi-common piece that fails every so often or dies or is particularly susceptible to water damage. But the only way that he can do it anyway to replace it on an iPhone is by getting a battery backup or an external battery case that is, I guess, Apple approved that has this chip in it to desolder it off of this $200 or $100 some device to take the one chip, move it across, and solder it onto the phone.
So nuts, man.
But he can't buy the chip himself to replace it. So Apple's been pushing against this anyway, and their argument, because they've actually sent their own people out, paid for their own people to go out to these states to fight these bills.
Yeah, absolutely.
And their argument is, one, that it is intellectual property. That, it is trade secret information, that kind of thing, that, like you cannot distribute this information. Like, okay, so an automobile technically contains trade secret information.
Yeah.
But if I take apart my car and sell the information online, nothing illegal about that.
Correct.
Like, I'm not giving away trade secret information if I physically have the product that I can just pull apart and decipher myself. Just because it's a piece of technology that is harder to decipher for most people out there
Doesn't make it any
doesn't
difference.
make it any different.
Yeah, I agree.
The second argument here is that it's particularly dangerous for people to work on their devices themselves. Which, by the way, there's an entire company called iFixit that makes toolkits and repair guides that are
Correct.
specifically designed
Yep.
around this anyway. And they go through, well, actually, Louis Rossmann even does videos on how dangerous, quote unquote, it is for you to repair your own device. He takes a battery out of a MacBook and starts poking around, you know, in his metal with all the contacts on the batteries and all kinds of stuff like that. There's nothing dangerous here. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they're manufactured to be safe. Like that's the whole point of
Why
that.
they
is-
can be in the phone.
Yeah.
Right. Their own repair people have to deal with these things. So there's a certain
Correct.
level of safety that still has to be built into these things. Better yet, there's a certain level of danger that's involved there to some extent, but it's tiny.
Yeah.
It's very tiny. You have to be doing something explicitly stupid. I mean, but that's no different with your car. If you take both of your hands and touch both the battery posts on your car battery, you will kill yourself.
I have a video to show you later. There's a dude that started a car, holding his hand on the battery, and then taking his hand and putting it on the other battery and jump starting the car.
We'll get there. Anyway.
Yeah.
Kind of cool.
Back to fixing your stuff.
So this is the kind of stuff that Apple has come back with and said, this is why we're against this. It's
Yeah.
it's dangerous for consumers. It's trade secret information. This,
dangerous
that, or
to
the
go
other.
alone.
That fight against consumers on this behalf. You know, and I would understand it if it was a legitimate thing of like, no, this is intellectual property.
Yeah.
First off, other companies that really want to take apart your product and understand how it works, they have the specialty to figure that out.
Uh-huh.
Joe Schmo that owns a shop that he makes $10,000 a month on, you know, out in like some small town somewhere repairing products, he doesn't give a shit. He just needs to be able to replace chips by desoldering and resoldering.
He literally just wants the parts and understand how to
Right.
put them back together.
I mean, Apple has made software that purposely degrades your phone through the updates in order for you to want to buy their newer product because you're getting sick of how slow it is
Right.
and how it's acting, and it's artificial. And I forgot what the name for that is. It's anyway, it's
Well-
like purposeful degradation or something like
Oh,
that.
Well, so some of
Yeah.
that is legitimate. So there was a big huff that came out about that kind of thing, specifically about 2 or 3 years ago. That
But
kind of thing.
companies are notorious for this.
Well,
Artificial inflation.
So the one that
You were almost there.
the one that came out actually that we may have talked about on this podcast, right?
Manufactured obsolescence.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
what
there
it
you
is.
go.
That's it. Yeah.
No.
So like to some extent there is some of that in there, but it's much less done with a malicious intent so much as it is like legitimately the battery on your phone can't produce the voltage that it used to, and there are very tight tolerances whenever it comes to power for processors and that kind of thing. Whereas if the battery degrades itself, let's say it starts at like 14 volts or 13 volts, that kind of thing. Or actually, I think they're 5-volt batteries, but if the chip requires 5 volts specifically and no less than that, and suddenly it drops to 4.8, that chip just stops working.
Yeah.
Now, I understand, like, you have to reduce the performance of the chip to be able to support the lower voltage, lower amperage output that the battery has, because that is required.
Yeah.
Like, literally, the device stops working if that's
Yeah.
the case. But if there's manufactured obsolescence in there to the point that it's literally back throttling itself with unnecessary, or with an unnecessary need for it, then, or without a need for it, then I get that.
Yeah. Hence the definition.
Yeah. But
This is just outrageous, right? Like, we don't have any other company, we don't have any other product here in the United States that I can think of in which this is an issue. If your PS4 dies, there's a warranty on it, sure, but you can literally go to any shop and they can repair it. They can take it apart. You can take it apart at home and go find the parts. The parts aren't hard to find. Knockoffs or the originals, you can easily get a hold of them.
Well, so funny part is actually Sony and Nintendo were both involved in a lawsuit against the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, back in 2016, I think it was.
Wasn't long.
Where they had stickers on the device that said the
yes.
warranty was void if removed or damaged, that kind of thing. But the problem is that they did not offer a repair service beyond that point that even consumers could pay for.
Correct.
Or parts that independent repair shops could purchase to get that stuff and repair it themselves.
And so they lost the lawsuit.
They lost the lawsuit. Well, it wasn't even a lawsuit. It was the Federal Trade Commission coming after them saying, we're giving you a fine for this. You need to change your stuff.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just them. It was also Asus, HTC, and a bunch of other
All kinds of
companies.
those
There was six companies total that were involved.
Companies don't want you to fix their stuff. I mean, it's the same thing like what I would do at the house. You would look at something and you're like, man, it just stopped working. It's like, let me take a look at it.
Yeah.
Right.
You take it apart and you realize filter's clogged.
Right. Here's the
not a big deal.
Here's the thing, though.
Brand new. Here you go. It'll be $150.
If you are able to partner with these mom and pop shops, which I know some of the PC companies will do, where they can get some commission off of repairs for various products, you're still going to make that money back.
Yeah.
Like, and in an even easier way, because here's the thing, 9 times out of 10, most humans are lazy.
Yeah.
They just want the easiest fix where they're not getting gouged for it.
If I can walk down the street to Joe's shop that can
100%.
take my device for a few hours, swap a single chip out or clean some corrosion off, that kind of thing, and then hand it back to me, awesome.
There's a power
I'd love to do
supply
that.
board that went out on my TV like 2 or 3 times now. And I paid like $50-$100 to have it fixed.
Yeah.
But everybody else would be like, TV's broken and it's probably going to cost more to repair it than it would be to get a new one. And I'm like, if you take the time to figure out how to work on things, most of the time you can save yourself a lot of grief.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where a lot of this stems from. But they know that. They don't want you to do that.
They know that the average person could really take apart their own device and figure out how to replace a screen or how to swap a battery out, that kind of thing. Until
when
you
people
start getting
started
into
realizing they could take apart iPhones, Apple got pissed.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
They were not happy about this revelation.
Actually, one of my favorites was George Hotz that did the original jailbreak on the iPhone, because even from a software perspective, Apple was saying, oh, no, you can't do this. This is intellectual property theft, or this is manipulation of our software, that kind of thing. And they lost that lawsuit.
Yeah.
Because
100%.
you own the device. It's up to you to do what you want with it, that kind of thing. If Apple says after the fact, no, you've tinkered with the device and now our software may not be compatible, that's
one
different.
thing,
They're
yeah.
protecting themselves and their own software and all that stuff. Cool.
That's no different than any other warranty where it is like, hey, if you peel back the sticker, we're not liable for whatever damages are available. Well, you can pay for a service to fix it.
We're
but
not going to give you
won't-
free warranty
Correct.
service.
Yeah.
But
No.
if you send it to us, we'll still charge you to
No
repair the
different.
But
device.
that's also my problem with digital and physical games too. It's the same argument. Oh, if you bought it physical, you're able to do what you want, resell it and everything else,
Yeah.
but you can't digitally. And it's like, well, it's because you haven't bought it, you're leasing this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I should be able to do with it what I want. And now we have the program to be able to switch primary consoles. It's a giant pain in the ass.
So
Hopefully they fix that with PS5 because
So the final kicker on this, anyway, is you had mentioned repair programs, that kind of thing that some of these companies started doing. Apple already has one. They opened it up about, I think it was 6 months ago.
okay,
It's called the
that makes
IRP.
sense. Yeah,
It started in September.
Okay,
The independent repair program is what they're calling it, that kind of thing.
original.
Yeah.
So Louis Rossmann released a video in December that went through the process of it, because he refuses to go through that program because he's skeptical about it, that kind of thing.
I understand
So
his skepticism.
he waited for another shop. A close buddy of his was applying to go through the process. It took him 4 months to be able to get to the application part where he can actually go in to purchase parts. But the website that Apple built out does not allow them to search for individual parts by anything other than their serial number.
Which you have no idea in any way to find out what the serial number is.
And those parts don't include chips.
Why?
Because they don't want to manufacture
I know.
them.
They don't want people to be able to fix it. They want you to still go to the Genius Bar.
But here's the other thing, too, is it's also with the Apple tax that goes on top.
Of course it is.
So a screen to order one would cost you about $200 or $250, which is Apple's tax on top of it. And then you have to charge a repair cost on that for the man hours it's going to cost to actually replace it.
This is why my next laptop will not be a MacBook Pro.
Yeah.
I'm done. I'm done with the cost of it.
The problem that comes on top of that is eventually the screen repair cost comes out higher than what Apple would give you to buy another phone.
Yep.
So here's the not to mention, so here's the big kicker too is apparently the way that you search for it by serial numbers are based on the serial numbers you actually see on the inside of the phone, because some phones are manufactured differently. Now, you may recognize some of these, that kind of thing, but you may not always know what's in the phone because, for example, the 64 gig versus the 128 versus 256 may have different board designs slightly because the storage is bigger on one versus the other. Now, I'm using an example. I don't know if that's actually the case, but the idea is what you have to do is you have, and I guess they have to validate the serial numbers, but you have to take the device, you have to take it apart through their approved method in the manuals that they give you. You have to find the serial number on the inside of it. Then you have to go into Apple's system and order the part that you need. The return time on that is about 1 to 2 weeks. So a consumer, your customer, has to sit without their device for 1 to 2 weeks waiting for this part to come in and pay way more than the Apple Genius Bar would have given you for the device in the first place to buy another one.
Now, there's also an argument to be made that as time goes on, they'll understand what parts are more common. They'll keep some in stock, etc. But that is still absolutely ridiculous.
That's not their goal.
Well, but the in-stock versus out-of-stock isn't the problem. It's how long it actually takes them to process the order for a repair part or replacement part.
I'm saying, like, as a repair person, you would say, hey, I'm going to keep X amount in stock. You're going to order 5 of them. And
so Apple's argument, anyway, in the most recent one that I had seen in New Hampshire, I think, was about the right to repair bill that they were trying to pass there. And Apple's execs that came out had said, well, we offer a repair program for this. And Louis Rossmann, who had already spoken, didn't get a chance to come back with a rebuttal on it. So the issue, it's the way that like legislative hearings go. That they're not really
one person, then another person, and sometimes you get their rebuttal, but oftentimes you don't because it's a hearing. It's not a trial.
Right. The board members or the legislative members that are at the front can ask questions if they want, that kind of thing. But the problem is you as the audience, once you've had your 60 to 90 seconds to speak, that's all you get.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a shame, though, that like they're kind of coming back with these rebuttals or they're coming back with these things that are on the top level look good.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, we're trying to work with independent repair companies, that kind of thing. And the problem is
full of it.
The other problem is, too, is because these legislators don't understand what it is, that kind of thing. They don't understand. They don't know to ask the question.
Yeah.
They don't know how to ask the question. Okay, so how effective is this program?
Yeah.
What does your sign-up time look like? How many companies have signed up for this? What is the timing for all of this, and what is the cost for all of this?
I am certain that they're sitting here thinking like, oh, it's probably like an independent auto repair shop where they're just working with the manufacturer and it's fine.
Yeah.
Like they have no concept of what this actually delves into.
That's not how that works.
Correct.
And better yet, the thing is that there are still no third-party companies that can provide parts for this stuff. Because technically, the parts are considered intellectual property for them. They're considered IP.
So in like a final wrap-up of this, like, you know, we're talking about a lot of the problems. Do we see any hope here in the future? Is there a fight that people can out there go work for or work towards or anything along those lines? Or
European Union.
Okay, European Union. Let's do it.
So the EU, the European Parliament,
I saw this. Yes,
made a very specific recommendation, and apparently the bill actually went out on October of 2019. That as of 2021, manufacturers will have to start providing repair manuals and this, that, or the other for for some of these shops, or start making these things available and support the devices for 10 years. That is part of their recommendation to their member countries.
On top of Apple and Android phones have to use one charger.
That's why they went to USB-C.
So they actually mandated in the EU that all phones like that are being produced have to use the same cable to charge.
Man, how did they do that?
It's because that's
The
a requirement to sell the
legislature,
product there. Yeah.
They can say, yeah, we want it to be this way, so it is this way.
Yeah, like if not, then you just leave out the entire European
And they don't
continent.
want to do that.
Yeah.
Well, because the problem is, like, both of them would equally have to say, yep, we're going to pull everything out. Well, although it's not even Google.
Android's going to be fine because
it's the
they're just,
manufacturers. So I would say if they decide to pull out, some Chinese manufacturers could go, okay.
yeah. I mean, they're going to be completely fine because Apple's the one that has a proprietary, and they're not going to. Nobody else is going to budge. Why would they?
Yeah.
Like
I mean, the only thing that's going to hit is like the small manufacturer that is for some reason still using micro USB. That's going to be like, God, I guess I got to go over to USB-C. All right, fine. But.
So EU is our hope. Hopefully this will, but from a cost perspective, though, I would imagine that Apple's going to start taking this into account in general, simply because, once you're doing it for one region, similar to what we're talking about here with the chargers, like eventually it just makes it easier for you to produce one model that goes out everywhere, right?
Right. So I mean, that does simplify things a little bit more. I think if they just decided, like, as a whole for this entire issue, if they decided they were going to simplify things from a manufacturing perspective or a repairability perspective, that kind of thing, instead of making their devices these giant sealed cases, that kind of thing, give some sort of method to make this repairable, that kind of thing. Don't just go on the idea of, okay, if somebody cracks their screen, that kind of thing. Okay, so it's a minor repair issue, but if it's too damaged, then we got to take the device in and replace it. If they don't use iCloud as a backup service, well, sorry, their storage is f***ed and all of their...
this isn't a black box. You know how it works.
Yeah.
Let other people know how it works.
Yeah.
Please let us know what you think about right to repair in the comments floating vaguely above John over here.
Below.
He's got a little halo. That's where the comment section is.
The square around his face right now.
What do you think about the Festival?
It's different.
Sweeter than I expected.
Yeah. It almost looks like Diet Coke at first.
Yeah, absolutely.
How dark it is, because it's the darkest out of all the beers we've been drinking.
Yeah.
So at first I was like, I hope it tastes like Diet Coke.
Just not what I expected.
It's like a light porter.
Yeah.
It's the best way I can describe that.
That's a good definition there.
It's like you took a lager and a porter.
Yeah. Dispatcher brought us some sweet water.
Oh, yeah.
Sweet water.
This one's actually sweet water.
I'm going to take my 420 extra pale ale.
Giggity. Moving on to the next topic here. Keep it on the technology track. Handsome John here want to talk about something involving Sony, VR headsets, all that cool schniz.
Yeah, it was more along the lines of just like a conversation starter, because I've had, because of Sony. Is VR really the future? Is Sony going to... Oh my God, John can't write.
Going to
Is Sony going to
move for? I think
there you go. Move for
words.
VR in the future, or will PC win this market like Nintendo does handhelds? And the reason I asked this question is mainly because the Vita. The way that they went with the Vita, they put a couple of AAA titles out, like Uncharted Golden Abyss, and it was doing it was doing fairly well, but they didn't really get behind it. And so far with VR, there have been a couple of games that have come out that they've started out with, and
Some real
they even
bangers.
added a couple of games on PS Plus.
And in the month we're recording, it's February, you get Firewall.
And so far their support for VR just seems lackluster. We've been asking since the get-go for new types of controllers, more intuitive type of controllers that go with better gameplay.
You don't like the wands?
The wands are freaking atrocious.
I want you to know I used them at Beat Saber this morning.
Don't get me wrong. For certain instances like that, it's great. If you want to play Star Wars or Beat Saber or even something that's just fairly simple, the wands are fine.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to, like, when you're looking at something like competitors like with the Quest or Oculus, I think it was Valve and Oculus.
The Index and the Quest.
Yeah, it's just, it feels so good. It
Oculus,
makes sense. Like, everything is just natural. Whereas my hands cramp with these stupid Move controllers after a while. They don't feel that great. And it's old tech that they're trying to make work.
You're like pulling the trigger.
Facebook's Vive, right?
Yeah.
Facebook's Vive, yeah.
Oculus,
So what
I
was-
thought.
Facebook's Oculus.
Yeah.
Vive
Right.
is HTC.
Yes.
And then Valve has Index.
Gotcha.
So-
So what was the new Oculus that's supposed to come out that uses camera tracking now?
Who keeps up with Oculus? Come on.
Well, so
Nerds.
So literally, that is the most. This is the most evolutionary VR headset that's come out so
Correct.
far.
Yeah, it actually is really cool.
Because it uses camera spatial recognition of the room around you using like dot projection anyway to sort of analyze it from a laser perspective. But it also uses camera for object tracking, and it's supposed to have object occlusion as well. So if you move around an object and identifies that, for example, let's say a chair is sitting in the middle of a room, that kind of thing. If something disappears in the virtual space behind it using AR, for example, it is actually supposed to be behind that chair in your view, kind of thing. But it's also a completely wireless headset. It's a standalone unit, that kind of thing. It currently doesn't have PC connectivity, but it will. I think that's sort of the next evolution of this. So here's the other side of that is I fully believe that consoles are going to take over.
Yeah.
I will single-handedly.
Interesting.
I will completely.
I know.
I will completely say that.
Well, I clipped this out of context. You better fucking believe it.
I will say that the best VR experience is always going to be on a PC.
What do you mean? So I think we should define
the most in-depth, the most detailed, the most up-to-date hardware, this, that, or the other. Like as far as like quality is concerned, it is
as
always
of right now, absolutely. Just because the headset on the PSVR right now is not great.
So it's always going to cost. But at the other end of that, it just like being part of the PC Master Race at this point, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg to do it.
Yeah,
you're going to spend $2,000+ on a decent rig in the headset to make it happen. But you're going to get a great experience out of it is the difference, that kind of thing. You're going to have an OLED screen that runs across you. You're going to have micro LEDs that are actually going to be running your individual pixels, that kind of thing. So you can't even distinguish the pixel lines that are in there, that kind of thing.
Which
Plus,
you
you're
can
gonna
with
have
the PSVR.
better motion tracking because for PlayStation to try to implement like super in-depth, like down to your finger kind of motion tracking, which by the way, the new Oculus headset does.
PS5. So does the Index. The Index, that was the big thing with the Index, is that it has the fingers.
But trying to implement that kind of tracking kind of requires the processing power, the horsepower that a PC can offer, that kind of thing.
Or a PlayStation 5.
PlayStation 5 has decent specs for what a computer would be probably 2 years ago.
Exactly. So it can run VR fairly well.
It's competitive to a current gen. I think it'd be a surprise. We'll find out.
We'll find out. We still don't know. But based on what I'm understanding from a graphics perspective, it's still 2 years ago.
Did you watch that Senua?
That's
pretty real.
So I'm going to throw both of you for a whirl. I think it's neither.
Yeah.
I think it is what the Quest is today, where the Quest is not tethered to a PC, it has its own processing unit.
Yep.
It is more powerful than PlayStation VR, less powerful than like the traditional Oculus, right?
Yeah.
But the whole point of this thing is that it is incredibly intuitive and easy to just strap on and play.
Right, the Quest is the one I'm thinking of then.
The one that's not tethered at all.
Right.
Yes.
But it is supposed to have PC connectivity coming up.
It does have the ability to plug in to your PC eventually.
Well, it's supposed to have wireless connectivity here. Like it's supposed to connect to the Wi-Fi of the house apparently or something like that and use streaming tech.
Whenever that comes out, that'll be cool.
Yeah,
I agree.
we'll find out.
But currently, I think that the best solution is always going to be that because one, you don't need a PC, you don't need a console. It is a standalone thing.
Right.
It also means that you don't have to be in your house. You can take this to a friend's house. Like the like way VR is going to actually progress is going to be the same way that all technology progresses. It's going to be word of mouth. It's going to be, hey, try this.
Yeah.
The easiest way to do that is going to be on this object because the PlayStation VR, I've already dealt with this before where it's like, cool, I've got to bring the VR headset, my Move controllers. If they don't have a PS4, I got to bring that too. I got to bring that all with me.
Yeah.
If you're talking about the Valve Index, you got to bring your fucking tower and everything else with you. Like, so the way that they're going to actually progress and move forward is going to be these easier, smaller devices. And they tried it with phones. I think they were somewhat successful, but not.
I think that
They were for the gimmick.
Correct. Yeah. It's
I
similar
think
to
Samsung's was the most successful of
Yeah.
them, but you still had to buy the little
stupid thing,
slip device,
and
that
then
kind of
they
thing.
had a little controller.
Google Cardboard, I think, was the easiest and the most innovative of those, but it's still.
I think we all know Nintendo Labo is the most innovative of those cardboard headsets.
But at the same time, like mobility isn't necessarily the strong suit of what you're wanting from VR. We have Nintendo Switch and Vita for mobility and gaming. So, I don't think that when you're talking about the importance of VR, mobility should be top of the list. Looking at price point, capability, and common sense with the technology and what we're looking towards for the future is going to be more of a deal.
It's not just
whereas PS5 is going to be a lot more inclusive. There is a chance that they're going to come out with new controllers and possibly
they will. They're just not a launch.
Yeah,
it's
definitely not going to be a launch.
We're pretty sure on that. My point isn't necessarily that it needs to be able to be just carried around, but like your mom, if she wanted VR, wouldn't have to purchase anything else other than that headset.
Right.
Like that's how the Wii kind of proliferated. Is like, here's something simple, it's easy, it's fun. You can buy this thing.
Don't get me wrong; it could be a total selling point.
And I think that will actually push it further than consoles and PC ever will. Like that's the entry point to get people talking about it and introduce the concept of VR in general.
Because you're not tethered to something else.
Well, at the same time, like for instance, the people that come and play VR, we go to your house and we got other people playing Beat Saber, they really liked it. They might end up going get one themselves. But again, the cost factor between it, like how often do you really want to take your PSVR to another place? Is it necessary?
I don't.
Exactly. Like it's a stationary object to begin with, and it's going to stay that way until it becomes a wireless thing.
Well, and that's where the Quest already is winning, because it is literally not tethered to anything, and it's got the processing unit on the back of it.
But at the same time, we have Valve, which is selling out their entire VR stock right now outside of one country.
So I feel like that's a skewed story. I know the
because
story.
there's a limited
because there's
source.
a limited quantity of it, for one, and two, they released essentially Half-Life 3. Like, of course they're selling it. This is such a non-news story.
That's not a non-news. That's just smart marketing.
It's such a non-news. It is marketing. There you go. That's great. It's not news. It's marketing. It's 100% what that is.
A ton of people talking about it that even don't give a crap about VR.
I mean, they're trying to innovate where other VR consoles haven't yet with the finger stuff.
Well, you're talking about the Quest is doing that too, right?
So the way
that was with the dot projection, right?
So they actually have cameras like on the 4 corners or 6 cameras total on the device, that kind of thing, that actually read the environment, one of which is your hands. Now the problem with that is currently, because it's still a standalone unit like that, it doesn't have external monitoring of your body. If your hands go out of view, that disappears.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem, is like, well, a whole room setup with monitoring around the whole room, like going with a traditional Oculus or Vive setup, that kind of thing. Well, yeah, okay, fine. There's sensors in the room to detect what's going on. So if you use cameras around the room, then you could probably do a much better portrayal of what the person is actually doing, really. But the problem is that you lose a lot of that. But the standalone unit is much more comfortable to work with. It's just you lose a lot of those features.
What they need is a giant camera thing that you could just literally take with you, and it like goes into like this little hexagonal ball, and you unlatch it and just throw it into the ceiling, and boop, you got all your cameras, and you're good to go.
I'm pretty sure whoever
I feel like there's like a stake or a spike.
I was gonna say whoever's ceiling you're throwing that into, I'm pretty sure they're not gonna be happy about
it. The Valve Index is hard to talk about because it's not out yet. It's similar to whatever PlayStation has down the road. We can talk about the improvements and the possibilities, which is part of the topic for sure. But if we're aiming at a trajectory here,
who's going to win? The cheaper, more accessible, the more expensive, or the more?
Currently we already know who the winner is. It's PlayStation VR. They're killing it.
They're killing it. And honestly, that's why my bet's on consoles, because realistically, the consoles aren't going to sell to the masses, and it's basically an attachment you buy. Basically, that's like, hey, you want to get a VR experience just like the expensive PC guys have been ranting and raving about to you about. Here you go.
But you look at the connection rate, it's only 5% of all consoles sold that a person has a VR with it.
But it's, again, like if
it's still killing it in numbers by the actual
compared to the
number,
rest of the VR market.
The percentage is small, but
that's also my point, is that the amount of people that are interested in it. So it almost it's just reminiscent of the Vita, where the Vita was a good product.
Do you think this is Sony's fault here? Because people could be paying more attention to it if there were better games and more games.
Again, so it's this like, is it Sony's fault for not pushing the games to get us interested? I think so, personally. I think that you have a couple of good games, a lot of games that weren't on their part. I mean, Beat Saber was probably the first big game that really got us
Beat Saber,
super hyped about it.
Astrobot,
Moss. Rush of Blood was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. There's another one.
But it was a gimmicky one.
Let me think, because there's another one in there that I really liked that we're not talking about.
The Pong one. Spark.
Spark's really good, but it's not what I'm talking about. Spark's really good.
You want to work out?
Spark, man. It's
your
like the
whole
Tron
body.
discs where you're throwing it back and forth.
We were literally in our boxers in the living room just holding the VR.
Super hot VR.
Super hot. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to look for it while you guys keep talking. So there
are very few games, but a lot of them came out within the first 2 years of the VR being available. After that, we've only had like 1 or 2 decent titles.
Do not degrade A Fisherman's Tale.
And A Fisherman's Tale is cool, and it was fun.
Cool, yeah.
It was cute, but it's not enough to keep people going, I'm going to buy this I'm going to buy this peripheral for this console.
Right.
I do want to point out that you and I have also not played the latest first-party title for VR, which is Blood and Truth, and apparently it's phenomenal.
Okay.
So there's that.
I mean, again, this is an evergreen episode. There's always room to grow. But at the same time, so my point really is the interest level for VR enough for Sony to want to keep carrying on, to innovate, to make us better controllers, to give us a wireless headset eventually? And is the market going to be oversaturated, and we're going to find out, It's kind of like, in the end, Nintendo won. You had the Vita, you had the Sega Game Gear, you had the DS, you had all these things, and there's always seems to be kind of a winner or only one or two options.
Right.
So what are our one or two options going to be? It's going to be PC and most likely PlayStation.
Right.
Xbox threw that out the window and Kinect failed. Here we are. This is what we're standing to look at. But is Sony going to keep investing into this with really trying to push really good VR games, or are they going to leave it out to die like they did the Vita?
So I'm afraid. So from Sony's perspective, and this is the way that I see the executive board looking at this, is they are a multi-billion-dollar international company. So for them, it's very easy to say, yeah, that is 5% of our console, which is a portion of our sales, that kind of thing. So that is a very minuscule amount in the grand scheme of it. Mm-hmm. Do we really even care? And to some extent, yeah, I agree that they might look at it and say, no, it's not really worth the R&D cost for us because the ROI is not quite there.
And that's what I'm worried about is the end of the PS4 generation, which they really didn't. I mean, they talk about it, they push it, but they didn't push it hard enough.
Right.
And is it going to be, well, we're in the PS5 generation now. Do we concentrate on this or do we drop it?
Yeah. So for me, like, there's certain things that they should throw in there that would improve the platform. To me, like, for example, with PC, there were a ton of games that were already out that were just standard, like I'm playing on a monitor kind of games that were like no does of like, we need to play this on VR. Mm-hmm. So for example, Project Cars and iRacing were the two big ones that came out with VR, because in a racing sim, the ability to look around your cockpit and feel like you're actually driving a car, that makes sense.
Yeah, they had that and then they canceled the game.
Yeah. Which one?
It was Drive Club.
Yeah.
They had Drive Club, and then
yeah.
they put a Drive Club VR, and then they canceled
Gran
the
Turismo
online.
would be the only one that you could toss VR into and would make sense.
100%.
But the question is, because of the graphical fidelity of Gran Turismo, could the PlayStation 4 handle it? Because you got to essentially render two monitors or two separate views
Even if
of
it
it simultaneously.
couldn't keep up automatically, you could always do like a VR mode. I think that we'll find out real quick in the PlayStation 5 life cycle, right? Sony has the opportunity to come out 2 years into it and go, guess what? We're doubling down. We did a ton of research. We have got boatloads of feedback from you guys. We now have a faster console that can process things better. Here's headset 2.0 and the wand.
And that would be great if they did that. But when's the last time you saw Sony double down?
But hopefully they're
PSP to Vita.
I hope they're biding their time on this.
They doubled down on the PSP.
They went from the PSP to the Vita. That was them doubling down on handheld. It failed because they didn't back it, and there's an argument there.
Yeah, I mean, they did a lot of mistakes with the Vita too. So I mean, it was again, the Vita to me is still not a failure. It is a good console.
It failed in the sense that it did not succeed like the PSP.
That's their fault because they didn't push the games it needed.
Nearly 100 million units. PSP sold really damn well.
Yeah, but it also had a much.
No, I refuse to take that.
But they also had a long lineage.
He does this every time.
Damn.
The PSP was standalone for a long time.
2006 to 2013, which is when the Vita launched.
That's
right?
a long time. That's 7 years.
No, that's not right. That's not right. That's not right.
The Vita was around 2000.
No.
Yeah,
the PSP was not around in 2006. I will look it up. Don't worry. Keep going.
But my point of this with the VR, I guess, is unless Sony has just not spent their time well over the last couple of years, basically since the original.
That was correct. It was 2005.
Wow.
So they had not only the time and the install base, but they didn't give enough for people to go from a PSP to a Vita, like they give people to go from a PS3 to a PS4, PS4 to PS5.
Technically, 2004 to 2014 is the life cycle of that console.
That's
10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
That people were begging for that Vita. That Vita should have been out 4 years before it came out.
Vita came out
2013. No, you're right. 2011. You're right. 2011.
I was going to say, so the only reason I know that is the very first YouTube video that Dylan and I ever did was a review of the PS Vita because he had gotten a hold of it 3 weeks before its release because he was an employee at Best Buy.
So to be fair,
like legally too, like that was actually like something that
the Vita,
cynical
the Vita's only life cycle is only 2 years shorter than the PSP. It's not that much shorter.
Yeah, but look at how many games were released for it within the same time span. Yeah,
How am I gonna link it?
within the first 5 years of the PS Vita to the PSP. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Here's what's gonna. So if you're talking about first party titles, I agree with you. If you're talking about games overall, you're gonna be let down because the Vita has a ton of games.
Yeah, it's got a great. It's got a bunch of. It's got a bunch of
ton
great
of games.
As a matter of fact, most of the games that I really enjoyed were like Danganronpa and stuff like that. There were just so many versatile options with the Vita. But again, it wasn't because of its People didn't even mind coding for it. They said that it
We're
wasn't
getting
that.
sidetracked. I agree with your argument.
I know
We're
we're
pulling away
getting
from VR.
sidetracked. But my point is that you had something that worked, was functional, was good, and all they needed to do was send out number 2 the right way. And
I mean,
now,
they
that's
gave-
where we're at right now. We need to send number 2 out the right way. Are they going to do it?
We'll find out. I think that there's a 50-50 shot here. I think there is definitely a chance where they come out and say swinging, double down. Guess what?
We've
It
been
worked.
researching over the last 3 to 5 years, and
It's been better than we
Yeah.
thought. You guys were super supportive of this. We are the leading VR headset manufacturer. Here's the new one.
yeah.
Because they are, and statistically, like if you look at just the mind share and just the sales of VR headsets, they're killing it. That's enough to at least have a kernel of an idea of like maybe we should pursue this.
So
Yeah.
I hope they do that.
I do too.
So not even from the perspective of I'm going to buy a PS5 and I'm going to do this, that, or the other to play it and want to use it and this, that, or the other. I hope they do it sheerly for the competition.
Agreed.
Yeah,
So-
100%.
So the capitalism can take hold here where Vibe and Oculus both look at it and say, or Steam, Vibe, and Oculus, all three of them? Yeah.
Yeah.
All three of them look at it and say, wow, that's a really big competitor. Oh my God, they came out with a really good product on the other side of this. We really need to step up our A game on this. And then, Oculus and Valve or Oculus, Steam and Vive all come out with like big new products, that kind of thing that are like, okay, so it's a standalone unit. It has extra attachments. It has, finger or hand tracking and this, that, the other, because they actually double down and really invest into the product themselves to figure it out.
Can you imagine PlayStation Home? I think it would bring so many people back.
It's only been
So
out since
I'm
2016.
I'm
so that's
still-
key to note. Is like it's a little over 3 years old because October 2016 is when it came out.
I'm still waiting for the most basic of features, which, by the way, still hasn't seemed to come out yet, of a virtual desktop.
Oh yeah, 100%.
If I want to sit at my desk on my high-powered computer that can run 5 to 6 monitors at a time, and I can have virtual monitors that I place around here and have a preference, why don't I have that?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I get it, and maybe it's like, oh, the monitor companies are coming out after saying don't do that because we'll lose sales or something along those lines, but I don't care.
Yeah.
Give me a product I want to use because that's how I want to use it. I don't care about the gaming side of it necessarily. I'll use it so much more throughout the day. I'll pay upwards of $1,000 if it means I can have a virtual desktop environment with a keyboard and a mouse in front of me that I can just see with my headset.
Yeah.
But if it means that PlayStation comes in and gives them like PS Home or gives you some usability features of like I can watch movies in VR and this, that, or the other, of doing other things that, for example, like Steam and that the rest of the VR companies don't do currently, then I hope it pushes them to make that happen.
Yeah.
But it also will improve the hardware. It'll also push, like these other companies anyway for VR to step up their game to actually, I guess, and I hope this evens out to the whole console versus PCMR sort of argument of like, just like I said, where the console comes out with a good enough VR experience for you to enjoy it, have fun, enjoy the games, and be able to enjoy a decent enough experience that Sony builds for you out of that. And on the other side of that, the PC guys can spend a dick ton more money if they want to on, their nice expensive VR headsets and use them on their nice expensive computers, because I'll be more than willing to do that if it means I get a good quality system out of it.
Well, and that would just be par for the course on what we understand from all of this, right?
And then it means that, I can have an argument with you guys. Oh, well, you do this and you can't do that.
For context, 641 titles have released on PSVR since launch. The PSP had 1,368 titles, and the Vita had 1,575 titles. This is all through Wikipedia, so numbers may vary. But that's just for context. So I think that while you may be down on the VR right now, from how they've handled it, I think you'd be surprised in what happens with VR.
I want to be, because I have a lot of faith that the VR could be something really special.
Yeah.
I really do, because all the experiences that I've had with it have been really fun.
Yeah.
Nobody Stop Talking or
Keep Talking Nobody
Keep Talking
Explodes.
Nobody Explodes.
One of my favorite games to play.
As a party game, Beat Saber is a party and a standalone game. I mean,
Have you guys?
Hot Shot? No, not Hot Shot.
Spark is what you're talking about?
No.
No, Hot Shot Burn. That's not a.
I know it's not Hot Shot Bird. God, the freaking other one, damn it. Super hot. Thank you.
There you go. Final thoughts.
I say we keep this going just to make him mad.
I'll cut you
Because
off.
that's what I've been doing for the past 5
Yeah.
minutes.
No, I think we're in agreement that Sony should. You hope so.
I hope they do, not necessarily for Sony's sake, but
for the market,
the market's sake in general.
I agree.
Like, for example, the reason like Boneworks has come out is because, well, it's going to be supportive VR and all that stuff, and it is supposedly one of the best VR games that's come out to date.
Awesome.
Please let us know what you think about the VR future ahead. Let us know in the comments who you think will win the VR Master Race. In the comments floating above me,
Hello!
like some devil horns, because I ain't no angel. And moving on to the final topic of the show is my topic, and this was a hashtag that was trending back, way back in January, but I did want to talk about it because I thought it was interesting, and the hashtag was things I want to reboot. So we're each going to go around the table, pick one thing we want to reboot, and explain how it would be rebooted. You would think that I had picked something specifically for this. I in no way have done so. So I'm going to think about it right now, and I have already figured it out. It's going to be the Resistance franchise. So I want the Resistance franchise rebooted in a Division style, because I think that world is absolutely fascinating. So I'm talking about a third-person shared world shooter where you can play with your friends, but this is going to take place in the 1940s, which is when Resistance takes place. It's going to have the Chimera invasion, and you're going to be exploring these historic cities in that time period, where we can go around, work together, take on story missions, and save, rather than traveling across the country or anything along those lines. We're going to stay in more of a centralized location, but we're going to take down the Chimera in that location.
Interesting.
That is my personal pitch. I think that would be a lot of fun. I think Resistance as a franchise had a wonderful world building, and unfortunately just didn't get the chance. It was made by Insomniac Games. It was an exclusive to the PlayStation 3. There was 3 titles on there, and the whole pitch is that in 1920 there's the Tsukiji incident, which happens in Russia, where a giant meteorite
Isn't the T
crashes.
silent Tsukiji?
Probably. So it's that incident where a giant meteorite flattens a forest. Well, it turns out in this world that meteorite was an alien spaceship for a species called the Chimera.
Yeah.
And the Chimera are parasites.
So the Chimera has always been sort of a description on like Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
They call the giant monsters the Chimera. Yeah.
So these are parasites that latch onto beings and then use them as hosts to like distort them. So
Interesting.
when you're fighting Chimera, you're actually killing humans who are like distorted and
Infected,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah. But
like zombies.
2 brought in this interesting class system for its multiplayer where you could play as a medic, and as a medic you could fire at enemies that would recharge your gun, and then you could fire at your friends and that would heal them. There's like a more of a
specific
tanky
Overwatch character I know. But
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of that has been used more today, but I think this would be a really interesting way to kind of build that world out. We don't necessarily need a main central character. It can actually be fleshed out by all of us going on alone. You playing the Resistance games, what do you think?
I'm totally down with that.
Yeah.
I think that Resistance needs to come back because I think it's
100%.
a great property that was just, not that it wasn't handled well. No, hands down. The multiplayer that they did with Resistance was god awful.
Correct.
I thought it was a joke at first. Like, they're just like, oh, we're starting out this way, and then boom, we come into this real world. And then, no, that didn't happen. And I was like, I think that was Resistance 2. I was like, I don't know what's going on right now. But the campaigns were really fun. But I mean, I'm totally down with anything new in that world because I mean, you can make it a puzzle game for all I care. Like make it almost like a puzzle Uncharted type game, and I would be fine.
And this could be real because Sony now owns Insomniac.
Yep.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, I would say to sit on that would be stupid. I mean,
Yeah.
it does have a following and a lot of. I mean, and it was good campaigns for the most part. They had a lot of interesting ideas for the time.
And if you look at Sony's catalog, they're currently missing any sort of shooter in their catalog. Like they have Killzone that they barely touch now because the Guerrilla Games is too busy with Horizon.
Yeah, I mean they've
Yeah.
they got better things to do.
Okay, who's next? I didn't give you.
So does
any
it movie
prep time.
only?
You can do
or
whatever
a
you want.
game or movie?
Whatever you want to reboot.
So-
What you would reboot and how.
I have like I guess two minor ones.
I'm ready.
Okay, so like they're two spots that hit me from my childhood specifically.
It just can't be Die Hard with a woman.
No.
Okay.
Actually, after
Where did that come
I don't
from?
know. I'm just spitballing at this point. I have nothing
Jesus.
against women or Die Hard.
Die Hard, what was the last one? Die Hard with a Passion? Die Hard something?
I don't know. Yeah.
Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Die Hard with a
No.
Vengeance.
There's no. Die Hard with a Vengeance is in 3 with Samuel L. Jackson, and
Yeah.
that movie is spectacular.
Yeah.
There's
Well, there's Die Hard.
Live or Die Hard,
Yeah.
and then
Live
there's
Free or Die Hard, and then
whatever the last one was, which made no sense.
After that last one, it needs to just
yeah, it
needs
was
to,
like
it
in
needs
Russia
to die hard.
and
It
involved this
needed to
kid.
die hard.
That was the one to
Hey,
make it die
Sus,
hard.
Don't f with me. I'll shove a lightning bolt up you. Sorry. Samuel L. Jackson's the best in that movie.
Wow.
I'm
Anyway,
gonna beat my last score.
so kind of a minor one. I don't really know if this would take off quite as well.
Okay.
But a game I enjoyed a lot was sort of this arcade racing style, Midnight Club.
Okay. Yeah.
So Midnight Club Dub Edition was one of my favorites because dub rims and that kind of thing was always the big rage at the time, that kind of thing. So Midnight Club Dub Edition was a great one. It was based on a fictional city. I think it was modeled after New York.
Probably.
But awesome game, that kind of thing for what it was at the time, that kind of thing. There were online clubs and there was a big social following, that kind of thing, whenever you were a part of it, that kind of thing. Great time.
Okay.
Midnight Club LA was the last one that came out.
All right.
And I think bringing back another city, that kind of thing, bringing back San Fran or introducing a city that, for example, wouldn't be as well known, like Chicago or
Okay. Do you want to go with the
Seattle
Forza
or
route,
something
go
like
to
that.
UK or something?
You could go UK. Actually, England would be a wonderful one if you could rebuild, like, or London would be great if you could rebuild, like, the city, that kind of thing, and do downtown, that kind of thing.
I say go to Paris and you can go to the catacombs.
Yeah. Okay, not the catacombs, but Paris.
I like that I got the yeah on that. That was great.
Paris was great. No, the what? No. But like that kind of thing, like Need for Speed, for example, has fallen off since
100%. Yeah.
Because like Need for Speed Underground and Underground 2 were two of my favorite games.
Really
that
well
came out.
received, and now they keep trying to go harder into like the Fast and the Furious. Almost.
Right, but it's so arcade feeling that you just don't enjoy it. You know, like at least Midnight Club, I still felt like I was a physical vehicle in the city driving, and there was something that could stop me if I wasn't careful, that kind of thing. Whereas Need for Speed, if I bump into, you know, like a big pole on the side of the road, bounce off, fit around the side. Still going. I got enough momentum. There's no damage. None of that stuff.
Yeah.
You sound like a Heaven's Gate member. That's a joke you won't understand. I'll tell you after the show.
But Midnight Club to me was one of the good ones that came out because it was Rockstar actually that I think that came out with it. Come to think of it.
I mean, I'll look it up.
I want to say it was Rockstar actually that made it, because that was one of their openings into open world environments like that.
You're a rock star.
Oh, you. But I would think bringing back another Midnight Club would be kind of cool for that Simcade kind of experience. But the ability to customize your vehicles in ways that actually matter and having that social organization online again would be great. That kind of thing. Like, for example, Project Cars.
100% correct. Rockstar San Diego.
Rockstar,
Yeah. Good call.
But great time. I enjoyed the games thoroughly, that kind of thing. Los Angeles was one of the other ones, too, that my buddy Travis and I had picked up because we had always played the Midnight Club series and we enjoyed it thoroughly. So seeing another one come out would be a big nostalgia moment for me, that kind of thing. The other one, anyway, and this will actually hit home for a lot more people, I think, is Tony Hawk.
Oh, my God, yes.
But unfortunately, what's the company?
Activision owns the rights to Tony Hawk.
Owns it, but somebody, or no, Tony Hawk's tried to go to other companies to build a game, but Activision refused to build a game.
Like so Tony Hawk has a really tumultuous history where they built and built and built Tony Hawk Underground, Tony Hawk Underground 2, like Thug. Those games are fantastic. Pretty much after that, where it gets to like the Tony Hawk Ride and all these other stuff, they fall apart. They tried to re-release the game, like by taking tracks from 1 through 4 and putting them into like a collection. However, they didn't own the music license anymore for majority of those soundtracks, so that was weird. Yeah.
But I mean, coming out with another Tony Hawk game or relinquishing the license so that Tony Hawk himself could reuse his name from another company, because Skate, from what I understood, was actually a relatively good game from a mechanics perspective.
Correct.
But the problem is nobody gave a crap because it's called Skate.
Yeah.
If it had Tony Hawk's name on it,
it would have gone a lot farther.
it would have gone so much farther.
Agreed.
As sad
But
as
I
that
think
is.
Activision knows that, so they want to hold on to it and make it flop.
Well, I'm loving this pitch.
What they
I
should have done
agree.
was market it like, hey, Tony Hawk's Skate.
Well, how about they go ahead and get a nice soundtrack? Because like part of what made those games so fun is the mix between the feel
Sublime,
and the sound.
What I Got was in the first one, if I remember right. Oh my God, I enjoyed that so much.
Goldfinger Superman. Look it up. So good.
Yeah.
So good.
But that game also, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater also paved the way for other games, like BMX games started coming
100%.
out.
Yeah.
SSX was one of the ones that followed.
BMX XXX on the PS2.
SSX?
No. XXX. It had girls who were topless and they were doing tricks on their bike. Do you remember this, John?
BMX.
BMX XXX.
No, I remember
Topless girls that are playing. I'm not kidding. This is a real game where they would be on the bikes and they would do tricks and they were topless. It was like one of the only rated adult-only games on the PS2.
I don't remember
Don't worry
that.
about it. Let's
I was
just
going to
move
say, because I know
Why
there's
do I know that? It doesn't matter.
moving on. But I think having a resurgence of something like that would bring back a lot of nostalgia for people to buy a Tony Hawk's Pro Skater game.
Money.
And I'm not talking a reboot of
No,
the
like
originals.
a new game.
One based on like some modern skate parks, some modern locations. Toss the X Games in there. The X Games would love to toss a license for their name in there to be able to have like an X Games built into the game that you participate in.
Oh man, that'd be great. That's your whole try. You're literally trying to get yourself into the X Games, so you have to like go through the regionals and make yourself in there. Like, I'm in it. Let's do it.
What's his name?
Bam Margera.
That does Bam Margera is one, but
you talking about the BMX?
No. I'm not talking about specific competitors. Maybe he is actually.
Dave Mira did a BMX game that I loved on GameCube.
Yeah, Dave Mira had a great game that came out. I remember
Dave
that
Fenoy.
one. No,
The voice actor does.
I want to say
Why are you a horrible person?
I don't know.
Mark something.
Wahlberg.
But he was based. He had a fun factory that's based out of like L.A.
Talk about Bob
I
and
know,
Rich.
it's-
He has a show on MTV.
Yeah, it's Bob and
Rich.
It's not Rich. It's Bob and something.
That guy.
Yeah. The fat guy is Bob. I always thought. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, it doesn't matter. We understand who you're talking about.
Yeah, but like the idea would be like to have him
Big and
thrown in
Rich.
there or something like that.
That's a country band.
No. Sorry.
But like throw those guys in there, that kind of thing. They'd be willing to toss their names out. They'd be willing to
Just
toss their
cameos-
facilities in there. That kind of thing.
cameos from everybody and get Tony in
Because-
there, get Bam in there, get all of them in there. Like, let's do it. And you know, I haven't kept up with skating since the early 2000s. I don't know if you can tell; those are my touch points. But anybody new in skating, yeah, throw them in there too.
Big and Rob.
Big and Rob, yeah. Rob's,
But I mean, if you
Rob's
wanted
a skater, Big's the big guy.
If you wanted to throw attachments in there,
Big's dead, by the way.
make it.
What?
No, yeah, he died from being a fat person.
Wow.
That's why Rob's on his own show where they do the stupid YouTube thing. That makes sense.
But make it a multi-purpose game if you wanted to. Throw
Yeah.
some skating in, throw some like rollerblading in there, throw some BMX in there, throw some
yeah.
Like keep the summer games, and then you can have like a winter games thing that you release the next year or something like that.
Expansion. There you go.
Right.
That's what that guy looks like, and that's what he looks like now.
We don't need that. Yes, disturbing. No, I'm with you. I think something like a larger
seems
title,
crazy.
which has some interconnected courses, a main campaign where you're going for the X Games, some cameos, good soundtrack.
Yeah,
Activision, hire us.
absolutely
We
have
got
to.
it. We
Yeah.
got it. Like we've made
No,
the
they
game.
had it. They just don't want to do it again.
I know, which is nuts to me because I cannot imagine it's that expensive. Like licenses
Just
are
put on
expensive.
Spotify. Who cares? You got Spotify attached to your PS4. You can listen to whatever song you want to now.
Oh my god, what? Oh my god. So rather than having these crazy soundtracks, you have like your own little punky like ska soundtrack you write for the game, but you could have suggestions where it's like, hey, you should listen to this while playing this track. Like,
Yep.
boom, we
no.
solved the problem of licensing
Go the
in
Grand
games.
Theft Auto route. You literally have a folder like for PC gamers. I think you could
Oh,
still
where
do
you
it for
could actually
console.
put a CD track in.
You could put your own songs into the folder, and a radio station will randomly play them.
Yeah, we got you. We got you. All right, what's yours? We're running over.
Oh yeah, I know, because you guys wouldn't stop talking about freaking Tony Hawk.
I know, all right. Getting younger in my
Anyway,
mind.
I also have two.
Well, you better be quick.
They're good too. Actually, technically, one is a type. So, Time Crisis, House of the Living Dead, making that into a
Rail
VR
shooters.
game.
Some
Yep.
rail shooters. I'm with you.
Totally like playing Rush of Blood was really fun. I
Okay.
enjoyed that, and that feeling of Time Crisis modernized into a little bit more
I
realistic.
like this guy. He's got ideas.
Yeah.
Time Crisis in VR. Yeah.
Where is it at?
Like that writes itself.
I mean, it's perfect for it. That's what VR. And they, of course, they're not going to do it because that's going to take away from their sales inside the arcade. But at the same time, like it might not because it's so niche. Anyway, I really want that.
I'm with you
So
100%.
bad.
I am down.
I love Time Crisis. That was like my all-time favorite.
It's
Like
just
going
like-
to the movies game.
Nintendo should make Duck Hunt for Labo.
Yeah.
Like, how hard is that? Okay, anyways,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, made for VR.
Oh, no, I don't know. Ooh, okay,
Well,
okay.
you got the sabers,
okay,
man.
all right.
And you got the parrying and everything else, and you can
Okay.
move to dodge.
Okay. You had me in Revengeance. You lost me in VR, but you brought me back in with the sabers.
Yeah, about this, I mean, you're literally playing with a sword the entire time, so it's not. It shouldn't be unrealistic to want to play this game in VR. But the game in itself was cool, but it was too cumbersome for me with the controller.
It's because you don't know how to play games.
Yeah, no, I suck.
that's
Look
your
at my
problem.
platinum rate. It's like 0.02, right?
All I'm saying is that game is incredible, and you should try again. Don't make me do it. We still need to make a bet so I can try and force you to play some game I want you to play.
Which one?
I don't know. I haven't decided yet. Probably Revengeance now.
It wasn't a bad game. I enjoyed the concept. I just struggled with
Learning how to parry.
Yeah, at the time. I mean, it was a PS3 game, so I was still really early into my getting back in from just shooters from the Xbox 360. So
Parrying is important in that game. If you don't parry, you're right.
yeah, you don't parry, you die. You
Parry the
perish.
platypus?
No parry, you perish.
I would be curious to see how that would come off because that game is incredibly fast. You'd have to slow it down for VR, but
I don't think so. You've seen Beat Saber, right?
I don't think you've seen the end of Metal Gear Rising Revengeance.
I think it could be really cool, but I mean, I think you get better over time too. And watching some of these people playing Beat Saber, it is freaking stupid. Like it is superhuman what people do. This one chick did it with not only nunchucks but a freaking staff.
We should also point out that those people are not your average person playing Beat Saber.
No, I'm obviously you're gonna have to like make the game within reason, but at the same time, having like an insane mode
would be fun.
would be awesome YouTube content to watch because let me tell you, dude, like watching the really cool, like hard Beat Saber moments. Someone, I don't know how they did it, but they overlaid the person with Kirito from Sword Art Online. And I was like, that is really cool. I enjoyed that.
For your reference, Metal Gear Rising Revengeance is a game where you play as a cyborg ninja and you use your saber. There's no block, it's only parry. There's no dodge, it's only parry. And then one of the key points is that you basically build up an energy bar, which allows you to slow down time so you can slice in any direction as often as you want until that gauge goes down.
Interesting.
So like the way they showed off the game originally was just a giant tech demo. We're like, here's a bunch of watermelons. Watch them slice the watermelons. But it was impressive because it was PS3 and it's like, holy cow, it's slicing at the exact angle as he slices it. It's really cool. Very good game. Very good game. Okay. Please let us know what your hashtag things I want to reboot is in the comment section, floating above Mark like an angry cloud because I never get it right. But now I think it's time for last call.
Last call!
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, and that bell sounded so sweet. So once again, this is an evergreen episode. There are going to be some more things in the description that will happen, such as the weekly deals and, of course, our weekly reading. But I don't have anything to give to you right now, because this is recorded in the past that you'll see in the future. So, of course, you can check out Strange Garage. We are working on brand new content. There are probably some more races there, or Mark has died, and this is the last thing you get to see of him ever
At which
again.
point, I'm not editing it, so.
And then, of course, we do have our Discord. Please feel free to jump in. We love to have discussions
If
with
you
you.
hear the bleeps, if you don't hear the bleeps,
Mark
you
is
know
dead.
Mark is dead.
Someone else has just taken the video
Just in
and
case,
uploaded it.
I'm going to pour out one for my
Mark.
homeboy.
Why would you
Yeah.
do that? That's just rude. He actually
Now we
did
have
it.
to clean the table after this is done. Moving on to the question of the week. What is something you thought you would love, but ended up disappointed in? So I would say something like media or an experience.
I'll say there's some
I personally have mine
really
already
personal
lined
there.
up.
All right.
Is there's a Japanese RPG series called the Atelier series. So Atelier is focused around these little girls. That's weird. These girls
Starting off wrong.
/ women who are
just do
alchemists. And so the concept of the game is that they can go around and they can create items. Just make it more of a mess.
The
I'm not
hand
sure you're
motion you
cleaning
made of
anything.
go like cupping underneath. That was just
I
wrong.
don't really. I think there's oil in this fucking beer because it keeps spreading.
But these
Look at it.
girls / women would walk around and they collect items and they're alchemists. They could fuse the items together and use them in combat, also outside of combat. And I was like, oh, that seems interesting. Might be a little bit different than the typical Final Fantasy that I play, but it could be fun. Maybe it has an interesting story. There is a time mechanic to these games. One of my least favorite things in games is a timer of any kind. So there's a major time mechanic that if you don't complete certain story points by certain days, you'll miss out on swaths of the story and get a specific ending. So I didn't know that. Turns out the story is kind of like slice of life anime, which if you know what that means, it's just like very light, very bubblegum, not interesting whatsoever. And then the combat was incredibly generic. So by the time I got to the end of it, and I was fortunate enough to play with a friend of ours, Brian, because he was also playing, both of us by the end of it were like, never again will we ever invest in this series, because I wanted something, and this was such a disappointment. Unbelievable disappointment. And I waste my time on a lot of games.
Yeah. Mine was Mirror's Edge Catalyst.
Yeah.
Yeah. The game
one
that
out.
Yeah, I know, right? No, dude, I seriously think there's oil in this. Because it was you saw the spread on it. Like it's still a residue on this
It could
table.
be fish on the can.
I mean, I guess technically we drink like gallbladders of fish and stuff from Guinness, so whatever. Okay. Yeah, it's gross.
Mirror's Edge Catalyst.
Mirror's Edge Catalyst. Like again, what I wanted from that game was a really good campaign. Now I know there's going to be time trial stuff. It's all about. It's just the color scheme wasn't on. Like the open world that they created didn't fit with the scheme. It was a total letdown when it came, especially to a sequel of a game that I loved and actually got me into PlayStation gaming in general. But
I remember your reaction to that game because
Yeah.
you were so hot off the trailer. You bought the collector's edition.
Which never came. They just sent me like I don't even think I got charged for the game because I never got a thing saying that it was. I was not charged. I didn't show a charge or anything. It just showed up in the mail. We had left the house. I had to go back to that house and beg for the game that came in the mail, which was cool of them to give back to me. They didn't have to. They could have just played stupid, but they didn't.
Yep.
And it was. I gave it the good college try. Like I put in quite a few hours, and I was like, it just doesn't. The versatility of the combat didn't feel the same. The way that the enemies were very generic. They didn't really. I mean, they grew in like how many hits you needed to have. You know, in this instance, you want to throw them off the edge because it would take too long to deal with them if you're dealing with a time run. And it didn't feel good. Even the collectibles didn't feel good. Like it just felt like an empty world as opposed to this. Like when you first played Mirror's Edge, like you had all this beautiful blue and white and like contrast with the slight reds and yellows of the world that really told you this is for running and this is for jumping and this is like your direction. You didn't get that with this. It was just a lot of white and
Racist.
Yeah, well, no. It felt very vapid, where there was just nothing there. Even though they were trying to convince you that it was just open world that you could all do.
But it
this
was very
stuff
blank. There wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah, the time runs didn't even feel good. It was like what you feel with like a Batman playing Batman time run, except Batman had more colors, so I guess it didn't feel as empty.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're not alone in that because I'm trying to look it up right now, but I believe the Metacritic sits at like
2, 3.
It's not that low. It is lower though, like with a 69 and then a 5.6 user score.
Hey,
so I mean,
69.
it's people were not happy. We're at the 69 mark right now. But yeah, that really hurt me for you.
Mark. Yeah, that hurt me deeply. Like I fucking loved that franchise, and when they said they were coming out with a sequel, I almost cried.
Yeah.
Is how happy I was.
Yeah.
And then when I got that game, I was like, "What happened?"
Mark, what's your fucking topic? Beat my score.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was like, look at all the numbers.
Anyway, probably the biggest disappointment for me, anyway, of something I had a lot of anticipation for this. So I'm a big Battlefield fanatic. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of you could say, oh, well, any of the Battlefield games, they've all come out as disappointments. This idea. A lot of them have been pretty big hits, that kind of thing. Like the latest Battlefield still has a decent user base to it by comparison to the other
They literally
Battlefield
just
games.
added a new play mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they've continued to add to it and expand upon it. So the biggest one that I think I had the most anticipation for, because it kind of came out of nowhere too, was Battlefield Hardline.
Okay.
Which is not one that a lot of people remember.
Really?
Oh, I
Okay.
do. Yeah.
So Battlefield Hardline was one of the biggest flops that EA has published in a while. Or as far as the Battlefield franchise, it's the biggest one that they've had. And Battlefield Hardline was the only one not developed by DICE.
Battlefront 2?
Huh?
Battlefront 2 might have been?
Battlefield.
A competitor.
Oh,
for the
no.
flops.
Oh, well, yeah, maybe. But I think Hardline was actually worse because I think it only went 2 or 3 months, and then the user base just dropped to like sub 5 figures. Like, if I remember right, it tanked pretty hard, pretty fast. So the problem was that the game mechanics themselves were pretty broken. Visceral is a company that has done a lot of legacy games. Because I actually had to look this up just to
Didn't
make sure
Visceral
that
close?
Visceral did close,
Yeah.
but Visceral was the
they were pretty big as far
Dead
as
Space.
Yeah, they've done
Dead Space, and they were working on a Star Wars game before they were
Which
closed
I'm
down.
not going to lie. I might go back and play
Yeah,
Dead
so-
Space.
I actually got that itch too when we
Yeah.
played it. I was like, oh, this is actually kind of fun.
Yeah,
This is
so-
all right.
Let's see, Visceral Games did Dead Space 3, Battlefield Hardline,
Gotta play
Dead
Bioshock
Space 2, Dante's Inferno.
Ah,
Army
such
of
an
Two.
underrated game.
They did Army of Two. I forgot about that one.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, I forgot about Army of Two
Did
altogether.
Did they do both Army of 2 and 254?
I don't think so.
So they did the Devil's Cartel. They also did the Lord of the Rings games.
Which ones?
It says Return of the King.
Like the PS2 GameCube games?
Appears so.
Wow. Okay.
The
Visceral.
Third Age is
Yeah.
a 2004.
Dude, the Third Age is like a JRPG Lord of the Rings game where you play a second fellowship that follows the original, and it's nerdy as hell. And I love that game. I love that game. Like the final boss fight Sauron.
They did James Bond 007 Agent Under Fire.
Dude, I loved the multiplayer on that game.
Yeah.
God,
you
man.
fight his
They did
stupid eye.
NASCAR Rumble. They've done several PGA tours.
So they have
Tiger
a,
Woods PGA
a
Tours.
good pedigree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially for some older stuff like Game Boy games, PlayStation 2. But they came out with Battlefield Hardline, which was the biggest flop of the Battlefield franchise.
Current user score is 5.1 on Metacritic, 73 as the critic score.
Interesting.
I'm surprised it's that high.
I am too.
I remember when it came out, critics were actually fairly hot on it.
Was it high because the campaign was okay?
So, I don't remember the campaign all that well.
Do any of us?
But the online gameplay was very much Battlefield if you mixed it with Payday 2.
Oh, yeah.
So it's very much that bank heisty kind of feel of you have, your villains versus your police officers.
I'm
that
say
kind
your
of thing.
cops and robbers.
Yeah, it literally, and that's what it is, that kind of thing. Your cops have helicopters and all kinds of stuff. Your robbers have like special weapons and things like that they can do whenever they break into the bank and they can get through, and they literally take gold bars or money or whatever it is and try to run with it. And that is one particular game mode. But then there's also like the typical Battlefield stuff of like, okay, there's conquest and that like the basic game modes that you'll play in there. The problem was that the idea of it was fantastic. The story of like this is cops and robbers, that kind of thing, mixed into Battlefield in the open, sandbox environment, that kind of thing that you can do whatever you want, was a great idea. But the mechanics of it were poorly executed. There were constant glitches of like this was before even the like parkour mechanics that like before they became a real thing. Like a lot of that stuff anyway of like opening doors and going through things was sort of like the online servers would glitch a little bit of like you wouldn't have the best feel to it, that kind of thing. And Visceral never was able to give you that I'm in a first person game, everything feels smooth and functions right kind of game, that kind of thing.
It doesn't even seem like what Visceral was really well known for.
Yeah.
It seems like their pedigree was mostly done with like single player.
So Dead Space, I would argue, would be the closest one to it. But like for something that is such a massively multiplayer game, I mean, I'll go back through, I guess, some of the other games anyway from them. But I don't recall seeing anything that was particularly massively
even
multiplayer
Army
like
2
that.
was a.
But it's
it's a co-op.
Yeah, it's a co-op versus AI. Like it's really not that big of a deal.
I would argue if you look at their pedigree, that's what Visceral was made for, though, was, hey, we need to fill in some holes. We need you to make a game that works here. And I would also argue that most of the time they did very well with that. Dante's Inferno is a good game.
Dude, such a good game.
Those
Great
Lord of the
adaptation
Rings
of
games
the
are
actual
good
book.
games.
God,
But
I
it
forgot.
seems like this might have been the one miss. But also, I do believe Visceral was being leaned on
Don't take
more
all the
and
Gary.
more and more
NASCAR Rumble was easily one of my favorites.
to the point where they were just broken apart. And that's why
Oh,
they
yeah.
ended up just getting rid of them entirely.
This beer makes me burp more than the bubbly we drink.
I'm with you 100%, yeah.
But to me, Battlefield Hardline was one of the biggest anticipations because it was the biggest change up in the Battlefield line.
Yeah, I mean,
It's all based on historical wars or futuristic stuff, that kind of thing. 2142 to me was a great anticipation and a very well done execution of a game.
What year was that? Because that was the same. I remember seeing advertisements on the Xbox, on my sister's Xbox One, when we were
15.
playing. Yeah, Gears of War
2015.
4.
Lord of the Rings Third Age, 73 Metacritic score, 7.9 user score.
So to me, Battlefield Hardline was a very well done game in the sense of like it was a great idea.
Yeah. Poor execution.
Poor execution.
Yeah,
And
that's a
honest-
shame.
And
That's
that's
a
where
shame because
Payday
I
kind
like.
of succeeds because it's not like meant to be like this high AAA game.
But
It's
yeah.
that kind of cops and robbers game is meant to be kind of a AA, kind of a little bit more on the goofy style, but still could be fairly serious. Because Payday was fun.
Well, I think the one thing that I lament about this is that Battlefield is hindered by the fact that it is stereotyped heavily in this military large battlefield setting. And if they
That's
could,
where all the fun toys are.
and if they could do some sort of spin-off that would be successful, like what they were aiming for on Hardline, I think they could easily grow a lot faster than where they are right now.
The benefit to this, though, was so Battlefield 3, which came out in 2011, was the first game to come out with the Frostbite engine.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the biggest, biggest upgrades, that kind of thing, because everything was almost completely destructible, essentially, like down to the bare bones or down to the ground, literally. Battlefield 4 was an expansion on that. But Battlefield 4 was 2013. Battlefield 1, which was the follow-up, and if I recall, has Frostbite version 3.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think Battlefield 4 has like 1.5 or got upgraded to 2. That gave Frostbite 3 years to figure their stuff out and finally get everything together.
Yeah.
So they really were able to put the amount of time that was, or I'm sorry, DICE. I'm sorry, DICE is the developer.
Frostbite's the engine, yeah.
But DICE definitely got 3 years out of it to revamp Battlefield 1, which was definitely one of the biggest eras of like Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 were kind of clunky. Battlefield 4 was slightly better, that kind of thing, but it gave them 3 years to revamp everything from the ground up. Unfortunately, Visceral was supposed to be, I guess, sort of that bridge in between, and they just flopped out.
Well, not only that, I also believe that DICE has all of the engineers for Frostbite because Frostbite was made for Battlefield. EA made it a mandate to press it onto all of their other things because they invested so much into it. So DICE has all the people who know what the hell they're doing.
Right. But if DICE has 3 years to come up with the next Battlefield
They have
with the next Frostbite engine and rebuild it if they want to from
with
ground
the
up.
architects of the engine, like they have all the resources in the world they need, whereas Visceral,
and
unfortunately,
all the time in the world to be able to make it
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
And I agree with it from that perspective, but it's still.
it's sad. I understand.
Army of Two, Devil's Cartel, 4.2 out of 5 from GameStop. 54% on Metacritic.
Yeah, I heard it was a
how
terrible game.
divisive
I
can
heard
you
it's a terrible
be?
game.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, some people. I mean, we know people who like bad games.
95% of people liked the video game.
You're looking
Look at those numbers. I
You're-
don't get it.
You're looking at Google right now. We're looking at it.
Yeah, whatever.
Please let us know what you would like or what you believe is your worst disappointment. Something you thought you would enjoy ultimately left you sad, hollow inside, and looking for comfort food. You can leave it in the comments above me once again as a raging storm because life is ephemeral. And
But then it rains down and it sits below you.
I'm just kidding. Please feel free to hop into our Discord. Leave some comments down below. It doesn't have to be involved in the video. You could just say how your day was. I'd be happy with that.
Yeah.
And until next time, cheers.
Cheers.
My beer can's empty and in the thing.